friends. I'm Karen, and this is the Family Food for Moms podcast. We're talking about inspiration for family cooking and dining. It's a fun one today. We're going to talk about what we can learn from Masterchef. I'm sure you all know the show Masterchef USA. There's Masterchef Australia. We mainly watch Masterchef USA and Masterchef Junior. And it's always so inspiring to me, even what the young kids can cook and how elegantly they do it and how much variety. They seem to know how to cook all these obscure ingredients that I've never tried to eat before, let alone cook. But it's very exciting and inspiring. So I thought I would just mention for fun 10 things that I've learned from watching MasterChef. So the first one, something that I had never thought of before, but can kind of be intuitive, or you can completely forget about it, as they often do on MasterChef, and that is to always taste your food. Taste as you go and season it. Taste it at the end. Taste all the elements individually, like if you're making a lasagna, taste the bolognese, taste the cheese sauce or the white sauce or the ricotta, taste you can't exactly taste the pasta, but just taste as many elements of a dish as you can before you put it together, and then definitely taste at the end of cooking each thing. I often find with something like bolognese, it's really good to taste and adjust because that's got such a variety of flavor that it can have. So cooking it longer gives it a deeper flavor. Adding various little bits of seasoning helps. Adding garlic at the end helps. Adding herbs like basil really ups the flavor. Adding something like lemon zest to a dish is amazing. Like a soup, or you're doing a chowder and you add some grated lemon zest. It's delicious. And you can really taste the difference in that short time. Sometimes you can also start to realize what it's missing. Like maybe your chowder is missing some sour cream, and then you add that and it gives that fullness of flavor that you're looking for. So always taste as you go and then adjust by adding various things. Herbs, spices, salt, pepper, creams or sour creams. Anything helps. There's also certain things that you would add while you're cooking that still need to be cooked through. And then some you can add at the end. So usually herbs you can add at the end. Things like sour cream and milk you can add at the end. But things like spices and garlic, it's better to add those a bit earlier so they can still cook for longer. Otherwise they can be a bit strong and overwhelming. Along the same lines is to make sure that your food is seasoned well. One of the things that always seems to trip people up on MasterChef is not seasoning their food properly, whether it's the fish or the potato, the side dish, the main dish. If they haven't seasoned it well, the judges always mention that. So making sure it's not too bland, making sure that there's good flavor. And you have to be discerning to know what kind of flavor. Like I was saying before, adding salt is sometimes good, but not always necessary. Adding pepper is great. Sometimes you need garlic. Sometimes you need herbs. Something that really helps is lemon or citrus. So I mentioned the zest of the lemon to enhance your chowder, but squeezing lemon over fish, over chicken also adds a lot of flavor. So once you've tasted your food, you need to decide what you're going to do to make sure that the flavor is there. So I really would say that's one of the most important things when making food. So the kind of seasonings you could have on hand that I use are, other than salt and pepper, we have onion powder. Sometimes I use garlic powder, but I prefer to use fresh garlic. It gives a fuller flavor. Then spices would be smoked paprika. Nutmeg is great with mushrooms. I like a herb mix, but usually it's nice to have Italian herbs separate from the others. So things like basil and thyme would be separate from rosemary. I would use cumin in things like chickpeas or hummus or vegetable dishes. Cinnamon is great with carrots or butternut. It's also great for lowering your blood sugar. You can use it in oats We use it in the high protein pancake mix. I always add rosemary and thyme to lamb dishes and thyme to any fish dish. And I try to add basil to bolognese. Fresh basil is always great. Oregano is lovely. And obviously you'd use that on pizza. So find the herbs and spices that you love. I love seeing Jamie Oliver's videos where he has his little herb garden in the kitchen with all these fresh herbs growing that he goes to cut off. I never managed to keep that many herbs alive, but sometimes we just buy fresh herbs from the grocery store. Maybe some of you actually have a herb garden. That's amazing. Number 3, when you're cooking meat in a pan, it's very important to have good color on the meat. So no color, no flavor. I definitely see that a lot in Masterchef. So if they're doing a steak or if you're browning meat like a leg of lamb to go in the crock pot, it's so important to start it off with a piping hot pan. Now, often if I put fat in the pan when it's still warming up, it starts to spit, it starts to burn. Even coconut oil that's got a high smoke point can burn very easily. So I like to let the pan get hot with nothing in it. Especially if it's a stainless steel pan, you don't need to put anything in until it's nice and hot. Then I turn it off and I add the oil and let the oil melt. And then I turn it on again only when I'm actually putting the meat in. The same in the Instant Pot when we are browning short rib or lamb stew. It helps to just heat it up and then put a little bit of oil in at the end. But to get nice color on the meat adds so much to the flavor. It gives that wonderful rich flavor. So then when you're browning in a pan or in the Instant Pot, you need to scrape that color off. So we use a deglazing liquid like red wine or broth. And then you pour that in on the brown that's left in the pan and scrape it, and it adds to the flavor of the sauce or the gravy. So making sure to brown your meat well to give it good color and then to deglaze and use that flavor in the dish. That's something I've learned from Masterchef. Number 4 of what we can learn from Masterchef about cooking is to always let your meat rest after cooking and before eating. I find this fascinating, and I didn't really know much about it before watching Masterchef. But a steak, a lamb leg, it's so amazing when you let it rest. Now, you don't want it to get cold, and certain things are best eaten quite soon after cooking, like fish. But pieces of red meat generally work well if you let them rest, and then they reabsorb the juices. So you don't cut them before letting them rest, because then the juices leak out. So you want to just cook the whole piece in the oven or in the pan, and then you let it rest on a plate for about 10 minutes after it's cooked before you eat it. So this would apply to any kind of steak, really, especially steak, and then things like a big joint of meat, as I mentioned. And those really help. That time really helps to make the meat more tender, to be moist inside, and to really settle its flavor before you eat it and enjoy it. Number 5, learn your French sauces. I'm always fascinated by all the sauces they make in Masterchef that I've never really heard of. Well, I've heard of a couple, but not most of them. And it's amazing how a simple sauce can really elevate a dish, as they say in Masterchef, can really make it taste so good and just add that edge, especially if it's something that's a little boring on its own, like chicken or a piece of fish. A sauce adds so much. So 5 sauces that are good to learn, French sauces. So Hollandaise is one I'm sure that you've heard of. It's more common, and it's often used on the poached eggs for breakfast in the Eggs Benedict dish. So it's basically egg yolks and butter with a bit of lemon juice. And that's a really easy one to make. Then bechamel. Bechamel is like a cheese sauce without the cheese. It's very, very good. You can flavor it with salt. Traditionally, it's made with milk or cream and a roux. So you start with the butter and the thickener, which can be flour or can be potato starch, something like that, and then you add the milk. But then, unlike cheese sauce, you don't add the cheese. Sometimes I like to make a bechamel with a little bit of a cheesy flavor by adding some very finely grated Parmesan cheese, and it gives it a nice flavor. So that would be great on a fish dish or in a lasagna, things like that. Then the
velouté. I'm not sure if I'm saying it correctly.
But that would be a roux as well, with flour and butter. And then adding beef stock, beef broth, adding some kind of brown stock, traditionally beef or sometimes lamb. So that gives it a nice meaty flavor, like a gravy that you can add to your meat. Then the Bordelaise sauce. This is basically a reduced red wine, and it can go brilliantly with beef or any red meat. So you would take the wine and then something like shallots, some herbs, and then you bring it to the boil and you reduce it by half. And then you add beef stock and bring it up to the boil again. So that's really delicious too. There are many different kinds of sauces and derivatives of French sauces, but the other one I wanted to mention is the Espagnole, if I'm saying it correctly, a brown sauce. So for that one, you would cook up some good flavored vegetables like carrots, onions, and thyme, and then add something like bacon, and then you deglaze it with a white wine, and then you add tomatoes. And then it's finished with a wine as well, I think. And that's delicious to add into soups or stews or a risotto. So knowing these sauces can really just enhance your meal so much. So this leads to the next point, where MasterChef teaches us that you shouldn't have too much on the plate. It shouldn't be too complex or things that don't go together well. So something simple like a wonderful piece of meat and something underneath the meat like a puree, maybe a vegetable on the side, and then an amazing sauce over the top. So the sauces enhance your meal so much without making it too complicated. So I would like to serve sometimes a piece of fillet steak or rump steak that I've cooked with a little mushroom cream sauce. So that one, all I do is cook up some mushrooms. I put a lid over the pan for a little bit so they continue to steam. And then I pour in some cream, a little nutmeg and salt. And then sometimes I'll add a little thickener like potato starch, and sometimes it's not necessary. If your cream is quite thick and it reduces fast, then you don't even need that. But that is amazing. You just pour the mushrooms with the cream sauce over the steak, and it gives such a good flavor. And it's so simple. And then maybe I would serve a little bit of sweet potato mash on the side, and that's it. Or you could do some nice white fish with hollandaise sauce, and then perhaps some broccoli on the side. Like, that's all we need. It's really simple. It's really delicious, fresh ingredients, and it's so tasty. So that really helps the main element to shine and not have too many different elements, but just the one really good one. Then point number 7, what we can learn from MasterChef. This one relates to sauces as well, but to other things too. And that is to make sure that you cook things through, or if you're cooking alcohol, you cook the alcohol out. So if you're using red wine, white wine, you need to make sure that you cook it in the pan for a few minutes, or even flambe it if you fancy, to get rid of that alcohol, but the flavor remains. So if I'm doing a leg of lamb in the crock pot and I start by browning it in a pan, after I've browned the onions, then I'll deglaze with a little bit of red wine. Not even half a cup is necessary. And then immediately as you add it to the hot pan, the alcohol cooks out, and then you can add it to your crock pot with the lamb. So the same goes for the sauces that we've talked about. You need to cook it long enough to make sure the alcohol is cooked out, but the flavor is left behind. The same goes for things like cooking with tomato sauces and purees, like in a bolognese. The longer you cook it, the more the flavor develops. And so the sharp tomato taste is cooked down, and it really tastes good and rich and full. Same goes for something like a stew and even something like a risotto. You really need to make sure that the flavor is there by cooking it long enough. Number 8, what we can learn from MasterChef is the way your food looks is important. So presentation, plating, as they say on MasterChef, affects how people perceive your food, how good it looks, and even how it tastes. Fresh food is amazing, so putting something fresh and green on there, but not just dumping a whole lot of lettuce, but rather something subtle like a little bit of basil pesto or a piece of long stem broccoli, something that's vibrant looking, using color, sometimes a piece of tomato or fruit, or something that contrasts with the gray color of the meat. So you want it not to all look gray, but to look inviting and vibrant and fresh. Number 9, don't be afraid to try new things. Don't be afraid to cook new things, to try new recipes, to try new meats. I was always very intimidated by big pieces of meat. But with the tools we have today, the Instant Pot, the slow cooker, crock pot, it's so much easier to cook meat than it used to be in the oven for our moms and grandmothers. So for me, it's really great to be able to just stick a piece of meat in the crock pot and try one that I haven't tried before. So I had never done pork shoulder, and that worked great in the crock pot, very slow overnight. And I'd never done a brisket. When I tried it in the crock pot, it didn't work so well. It was still tough. So then I found the Instant Pot was perfect for that. And then trying new things, going on YouTube, searching for a sauce video or a piece of meat video and copying it is really rewarding. Or looking through your favorite recipe books and trying something you've never tried before. Perhaps something that's rolled in phyllo pastry, or perhaps a vegetable dish by Jamie Oliver. Those can be really amazing. I'm not a fan of vegetable-only dishes always because they can be quite bland, but he makes them amazing. Such amazing combinations of ideas. So no risk, no reward. Just enjoy those new recipes. Then lastly, number 10. What we can learn from Masterchef is to have fun cooking. Challenge yourself and be excited about it. Plan something that you really want to cook. We don't always have to be stuck in the rut of making the same things or cooking what our kids want us to cook. And I know it's hard because it takes energy and it takes time. But for me, I really have to have the joy behind cooking so that I continue to want to do it for my family. So enjoy what you do and have fun. Find ways to get inspired. What inspires you? Watching a cooking video, reading a recipe book, asking a friend what they like to cook, that they enjoy cooking the most, asking them if they can teach you. So find what you are inspired by and then have lots of fun. One more thing I'd like to mention is sometimes it's great fun to have a MasterChef challenge with your kids. Depending on their level of cooking, it's always great in helping them learn to cook. So basically you choose a recipe, or if they're quite proficient, then you can choose 3 courses. And then you get everything they need for the recipe ready. And then you give them maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes to look over the recipe, ask you questions, and then they have to cook it for the family. We've done this where my son has done all 3 courses, or where younger members of the family have done just a dessert or just an appetizer. And they so love being able to be part of that and cook for the family. And also they love the learning how to cook that thing. So that's quite a fun way. Also, we sometimes have judging where we give feedback and give comments. Other times we just do it for fun and we thank them for making it for us. So that's a fun evening to plan with your kids. As always, you can see more about these episodes on our website, familyfoodformoms.com. And if there's a recipe I've mentioned, or if I have a video for a recipe on YouTube, you'll be able to find them on our website. You can see photos of how we've done things. And if you'd like to email me, it's Karen@familyfoodacademy.com. I'd really love to hear from you. If you have any ideas for things that you've heard on the podcast that you want to add to, favorite recipes, things you've tried, questions you have, it will be lovely to chat.